welcome. I'm Asuma Kataoka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Trump deploys 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to Los Angeles amid fourth day of immigration raid protests, sparking California outrage and a lawsuit. Trump defends move as great decision as UN warns against militarization. Israeli strikes have killed 3 medical workers and a journalist in Gaza City's Tufa neighborhood. According to Palestinian media, Israel continues its military operations following the October 2023 attack, with Gaza health authorities reporting over 54,900 Palestinian deaths so far. The UN warns that most of the flour it delivered to Gaza since mid-May has been looted or seized by starving Gaza residents. As famine looms, the UN has rejected working with the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, citing concerns over aid militarization and forced displacement. The US President Donald Trump says Iran is now involved in ceasefire-for-hostage talks between Israel and Hamas. The US-backed plan proposes a 60-day truce, but Hamas has rejected the deal so far, asking for a permanent ceasefire instead. Newly elected South Korean President Lee Jae-myung will speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping today at 11:30 a.m. local time. Lee took office on June 4th after winning a snap election and has already held talks with US President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba. US-China trade talks in London will extend to a second day as both sides seek to revive the Geneva truce and address export controls in rare earth minerals. President Trump called the talks upbeat, while a White House advisor said Washington is looking for a handshake deal on critical mineral controls. Russia and Ukraine have conducted a new prisoner exchange following June 2nd talks in Istanbul, as emotional reunions unfolded despite no breakthrough on ending the war. Meanwhile, Russia launched fresh drone strikes in Kyiv and a maternity ward in Odessa, as Germany warns Moscow may soon test NATO with covert actions. Britain will spend $8 billion to expand submarine production, backing firms like BAE Systems and Rolls-Royce submarines. The move follows Prime Minister Starmer's pledge for the largest defense spending increase since the Cold War. US President Donald Trump has escalated the federal response to protests in Los Angeles, deploying another 2,000 National Guard troops and 700 US Marines. The move comes despite opposition from California's Democratic leaders. Governor Gavin Newsom called the deployment deranged and un-American, warning that Trump is using the military to intimidate Americans on US soil. Trump blamed what he called insurrectionists for violence in Los Angeles and praised his decision to send in troops. He later suggested he'd support the arrest of Governor Newsom for obstructing immigration enforcement. Here's what Trump has said.
I'm homing to come and arrest him. Should he do it? I would do it. In other words, I think it's right. Of course, the Abbott likes the publicity, but I think it's a fair thing. He's done a terrible job. Look, I like Gavin Newsom. He's a nice guy, but he's grossly incompetent. Everybody knows. All you have to do is look at the little railroad he's building. It's about 100 times over budget. We're putting a flagpole over there. Under budget. I always do under budget.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass condemned the federal raids that triggered the unrest. She urged the Trump administration to stop the raids and respect state authority. Here's what the California mayor has said.
Stop the raids, period. I would say give the power back to our governor, and if we need the National Guard, we can do it in the normal circumstances, which is the request is made local and the governor decides or not to grant that to our city.
The UN has expressed concern over the situation, urging all sides to avoid further militarization and calling for calm, stability, and restraint across all levels of government. Here's what the UN spokesperson has said.
We certainly hope that all parties on the ground will de-escalate the situation. We do not want to see any further militarization of this situation, and we encourage the parties at the local, state, and federal levels to work to do that.
Is President Trump sending National Guards considered militarization?
I think you are aware of what the situation on the ground is, and what we want is to see a de-escalation of that.
Protests broke out after ICE agents detained dozens across Los Angeles last week, while demonstrations have since calmed. Officials say the federal troop presence is straining local agencies. California has filed a lawsuit against the federal government, calling the deployment unconstitutional. Now we have Shri Das Gupta joining us for this news discussion. Thank you, Shruti, for joining us today. Is President Trump's use of troops in Los Angeles a proportional response to the protest or an abuse of federal power, according to you?
Greetings, Asuma. Thank you for having me. The US LA riots are not unique. LA riots pretty often in 1992 under George Bush. Also, National Guard was employed there when the city was rioting. So use of National Guard is not anti-national. It is not an unusual display of force. In fact, the reports that we've been considering as analysts on this side of the world, we are seeing that apparently the mayor boss of LA had asked the LAPD officials not to assist ICE officials while they were trying to take away these illegal immigrants. So basically, as a Democrat leader and under the able guidance of Newsom, they have not decided, Governor Newsom, they've decided not to assist the Trump administration in cleaning up illegal immigration in the state of California. So what happens after that is that if there is no local police support coming through, you are going to either have to storm into the city in large forces so that the people that you're sending in, the officials, the ICE officials that you're sending in to identify and then deport illegal immigrants are going to face a large number, because we know that there is a large number of immigrants there. They're going to have to face off with them. And that is usually going to result in injury to your government officials. So if the local police and the local establishment goes against the central federal structure of the United States, it is completely appropriate for President Trump to employ forces as desired. You have to understand, on the day one, he did not put in as many forces. He put in about, I think, 300 odd National Guard. Despite that, the city continues to riot. These rioters have turned into looters. There were various videos going viral showing that the shopkeepers were calling the police, saying that these looters have now started looting the stores. So under no circumstances we should be under the illusion that these riots were peaceful, they were not harmful. They were exactly how rioters are. They are destroying property, enjoying the moment of madness. They've put those electric cars, the self-driven cars, Wacom cars on fire. Now, what has those cars got to do with the entire anti-immigration protest? So under no circumstances should we fall in for the trap that this is a peaceful riot. This is disobedience, civil disobedience that has been covered by a blanket of protection by the Democrat leaders. And they are the ones who are saying, let's step back, de-escalate. But when in fact their own protesters are harming US officials.
And taking that point further, Shruti, how do mass migrant raids and troop deployments coexist with America's image as a democracy that upholds civil rights?
let's just understand that democracy is a dance. It kind of happens. It is never stable. It's not ever going to be stable. Riots are seen everywhere. But what we're seeing, particularly in this case in US, is that the previous administration had something some form of open borders policies, and they had invited literally immigrants from all over the place to walk across the borders and come and take up take up land, take up employment, and use up the US resources. Now, if we add this to how the social security kind of setup that was set up for immigrants. So they were paying people to cross the border and then come and live in America, while America was going into its own debt cycle crisis. So that added to the fact that they were inviting immigrants, it is pretty clear that the Biden administration and the Democrats were more interested in building up vote banks, because once you have these settlers come in and you've given them citizenships and you've kind of legitimized their existence, they are your permanent voter bank because they know you protect them. When the Republicans come into force, which has happened with what Donald Trump is, when he is becoming president, he's saying, I don't want anybody who's not here, supposed to be here through legal process. So if somebody's gone through legal process, they're not facing this action. So police force action against illegal immigrants is a complete form of democracy. You cannot, if your country has open borders, it's as good as having no borders. So you cannot leave your establishment open to anybody walking through. You have no check or guidance whether who's walking through is a criminal, gangster, is psychologically stable. What exactly are you facing is when you invite people over from across the border to just take space in United States is exactly what LA is facing. Now, if you kind of marry the two, the use of force, use of National Guards, there is no other way to expel them. Now, in this particular LA riots case, the wonderful part is that the pro-Palestinian groups have added their body to the anti-immigration groups. So it's not just an anti-immigration, right? It's a full-on democratic ideological war that is happening on the soil of LA. So we have to understand that it is not whether the democratic process or the democracy of USA is collapsing. It was actually a very anti-democratic process that was put in by the Democrats, that is under Biden administration, which is now being countered by force. And unfortunately, for something like this, there is no other recourse.
And picking up on your earlier point, what does this clash tell us about the state of federal-state relations under the current Trump administration?
This is something that we have noticed across the world, now including my country, India. If your state government is not in consonance or is not in resonance with the central government, there is a difficulty in implementing policies. And this is exactly case in point. Now, in the US federal structure, they kind of ensure that there are a lot of, there's a large body of work that can only be done by a state. Education being one of them, but immigration is coming directly under the federal government. That's the central government, that is the earlier Biden and now Trump administration. If a state is refusing to bow down to the diktats put in by their president, chosen by the people, then it is an outright rebellion. And so if President Trump is within his rights to say that this Governor Newsom has to be brought to account, he has to pay for what he's doing to the people of California, people of LA, because he has refused to follow the law laid down by the federal structure. California, if it is not part of the US federal structure, would be open to a lot more hostilities. It probably take over by Mexico. Half of the rioters standing there are giving street interviews calling themselves Mexicans. So you have and calling California and LA part of Mexico. So you have to understand that California enjoys its beautiful status and its rich social fabric, but it does not control the US borders and it does not control central policy. So the federal structure needs to be obeyed, which is now being flouted right in the face of Donald Trump. So which is exactly why these riots have occurred. The mayor of LA, the governor of California, they have both rebelled against diktats put out by the central structure, and which is kind of not really good for the overall democratic structure of USA.
Thank you very much, Shri Das Gupta. She's an international affairs expert. And thank you for bringing your expertise to our discussion today. Now we move on to our next story. In a significant development in the Ukraine-Russia war, they have begun what could be the biggest prisoner exchange of the conflict so far. Monday's swap involved young prisoners of war under 25 and severely wounded soldiers following direct talks on Istanbul on June 2nd. Both sides agreed to exchange at least 1,200 POWs and repatriate thousands of war dead. Neither revealed Monday's exact numbers, but Moscow says the exchange was equal on both sides. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that the first group had come home, adding more stages will follow in the coming days. Let us listen in.
Сьогодні стартував обмін, перший етап домовленості в Стамбулі. Всього буде кілька етапів. Принаймні, саме про це говорили з російською стороною. У цьому обміні мають бути поранені, також важко поранені, і також ті, кому 25 років і молодше. Очікується, що процес обміну триватиме ще не один день. Деталі процесу доволі чутливі, тому зараз інформації менше, ніж зазвичай. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає здійснити обмін і працює, щоб всі наші люди могли повернутися додому. Додому з російського полону.
Russia says its returned troops are now in Belarus receiving care. Kyiv says some freed soldiers have been captive since the war's start. Meanwhile, the conflict rages on, with Russia claiming gains in Dnipropetrovsk and Ukraine reporting the largest drone strike by Moscow to date. And in Russia's Kursk region, one person was killed and others injured after a Ukrainian missile hit a recreation facility. Verified footage shows the aftermath. Despite this rare cooperation on pause, broader peace talks remain stalled, now entering the fourth year of war. Now we move on to the Middle East. Israeli authorities say activists aboard a Gaza-bound aid boat are currently being detained and awaiting deportation after their vessel was intercepted in international waters. The ship, named the Madeleine, was carrying food and supplies to the war-ravaged Gaza Strip, where the UN has warned of severe food shortages. French President Emmanuel Macron has called for the immediate release of the activists, including 6 French nationals and Swedish campaigner Greta Thunberg. He called for the reopening of humanitarian supply routes. Let's listen to what he said.
La France appelle à un cessez-le-feu au plus vite et à la levée du blocus humanitaire. Le scandale, l'inacceptable qui se joue à Gaza, c'est cela. Et c'est ce qui, depuis début mars, est une honte. Une honte. Et donc, j'ai encore eu et le président.
The Madeleine was towed to the Israeli port of Ashdod after being stopped overnight. Israel released the first images of Thunberg following the interception, confirming that all passengers are safe and unharmed. The situation highlights ongoing tensions surrounding aid efforts to Gaza amid the long-standing blockade and escalating humanitarian concerns. Now we move on to U.S. trade talks. Trade talks between the United States and China have entered a second day in London as officials from both sides tried to ease growing tensions over tariffs and export curbs. The first round wrapped up on Monday at the historic Lancaster House. Discussions will resume Tuesday morning. China's team is led by Vice Premier He Lifeng and includes senior trade officials. The U.S. side is represented by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. One key issue, China's slow release of rare earth exports, crucial to many industries. The U.S. says Beijing is not fully honoring a deal made in Geneva last month. President Trump, speaking to reporters Monday, said he's only getting good reports from London. Last week, he held his first phone call since returning to office with President Xi Jinping, calling it very positive. Any breakthrough in London could ease global markets and boost demand for key commodities. Let us listen in to what the U.S. President Donald Trump has to say.
We are doing well with China. China's not easy, just like your home country is not easy there. I think we're doing very well. They're over there now. I'm only getting good reports. It's a little early, but they'll be calling in soon. In fact, probably when I get back, I'll have my first call from them. We want to open up China. And if we don't open up China, maybe we won't do anything, but we want to open up China. It'll be a great thing for China, a great thing for the rest of the world.
Now for this discussion, let us hear from Sharad Kohli. He's a senior economist joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you, Sharad, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Is the US-China Geneva Trade truce salvageable, or has the rare earth standoff pushed both sides too far?
I think with President Trump, you can never be too far because we've seen so many flip-flops, so many turnarounds happening over the last few weeks that every time there's a declaration made, it's taken back. Well, we should keep in mind the fact that an average American household has added about $1,200 to its monthly expense, which is a lot of money. So I'm sure this will count on President Trump's mind while negotiating a deal. But at the end of the day, I think from what we heard President Trump saying just now, it seems like a bargain that we levied these tariffs on the countries, and he wanted to use that as a bargain tool to see what best he can do. And we must understand that the root of these tariffs is the trade deficit which China has with countries like China, with America has with countries like China and India. So I don't know how this trade deficit he's going to fulfill, because America right now is not in a position to manufacture the goods which are being imported from China. Well, either it can set up factories overnight, but the cost of production in America is very, very high. The cost of getting 1 acre of factory land in America is close to $200,000, more than $200,000 per acre. The cost of skilled labor per hour is about $40. So it's not going to be easy for President Trump to get factories into America that quickly. That is what he wants. It has taken decades for this global equation to form, where China became a manufacturing hub, India became a services hub. And of course, things do change over a period of time, but probably he wants it to happen overnight. That's not going to happen. And China has played a very hard game. It has retaliated by way of tariffs. Every time a tariff threat has come from America, it has retaliated. It forced President Trump to give a pause on those tariffs for 90 days. And I think America has got the message that China is not an easy nut to crack, which is what President Trump said just now in the bites which you played. So it's going to be very hard. I am hopeful of what's happening about the negotiations going on between the two countries, but I'm not very, very hopeful. Well, maybe it comes out, maybe it does not, because each country, we must understand, has got its own domestic compulsion. You have to look out, just like America says America first. Every country has a right to say China has got a right to say China first. India has got a right to say India first. So I think the domestic compulsions do have limitations. You cannot, let the deal go as per the desire of the other country. So I'm hopeful, but not very, very hopeful.
And on a related note, Sharad, Trump has said the talks are going well, but offers few details. Is this posturing for domestic gain or a sign of genuine progress?
No, I don't really think this is a sign of any genuine progress being made, because he says there are positive. He said that a lot of time before as well. Well, he said that about a lot of countries earlier as well, but it didn't turn out. He's been saying that for Russia and Ukraine so many times that the talks are going well. He said that about West Asia earlier, many weeks earlier, things are going well. So I think that's a very general, comforting kind of statement. It doesn't really help, because even if he's doing posturing, even for posturing now, it's not helping, because most of the people in America now know that domestically what President Trump says and what he does and what he sustains, they are all on different footing. So I think we'll have to wait and see as to what is the outcome. Well, fingers crossed, but maybe there is some hope if not a lot of hope.
And if this happens, how significant is the handshake deal on export controls? Can such an informal agreement be trusted in a high-stakes trade war today?
Well, we should not forget that two of the largest countries, economy-wise, in the country are negotiating with each other. America being $30 trillion, China being $20 trillion. So combined together, $50 trillion of GDP between the two countries, more than $1 trillion of trade happening. And a very important aspect is that the Americans have now become dependent on Chinese goods for decades. And they have not just become dependent on Chinese goods, but they have become dependent on economically priced Chinese goods. So how America is going to handle this? As it is, there is a tussle going on between the Fed chairman in America and President Trump, where President Trump has snubbed Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, that they must reduce the interest rates, whereas Jerome Powell has repeatedly said that it's not the right time because inflation is looming over our heads. And if these tariffs continue, obviously, inflation is going to hit the American people hard, which will be very difficult for President Trump to handle. So it'll be very important for President Trump to probably give away some of the declarations that he's making and agree to what China is saying. I have a feeling that no doubt Chinese manufacturers and Chinese factories, they run on American exports. So there is a lot of China which needs America. But I have a very strong feeling there is more of America which needs China. So I think the deal will have to be keeping in mind these two aspects.
And building on that point you've touched, with China's exports to the US plunging and America facing a confidence squeeze, are both economies already paying the price of this trade war, according to you?
Oh, yes. There are a lot of factories around the areas that I know, Guangdong, which is nearer to the border with Hong Kong and China. A lot of factories have shut down. There is a huge inventory build-up ever since tariffs were declared, although there is a pause now. So some of the shipments have moved. But the Chinese investors and Chinese factory owners are very careful because they don't know what is going to be the outcome, whether finally the tariffs will shave a lot of Chinese goods in America may become unviable for the Chinese people to buy. So I think it's a catch-22 situation, whereas on one side, production is on and a lot of Chinese factories are in wait-and-watch mode. On the other side, these negotiations are going on. I think a lot of Chinese people are looking up to what is going to happen. And there's a very important aspect with regard to the third manufacturing power, which is India. If we take China, Vietnam, I take that as the second power, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia. The third power, which is India, has got a lot of opportunity there. Because if this particular negotiation doesn't succeed, then I think the Indian manufacturers need to pull up their socks. And they will have a lot of orders coming from America. Obviously, this will be subject to India-America bilateral trade agreement, the BTA, as we say. So as of now, everything seems to be in a limbo. We need to wait and watch as to what happens. A lot of uncertainty, especially during this pause period, which technically ends, some of it ends on 9th of July, some ends a little later. So we'll have to wait and see which side President Trump is, knowing historically over the last few weeks, I think President Trump may have to bulge and may have to, give away to the demands of the other countries.
Thank you very much, Rod Kohli, for bringing your expertise as a senior economist to our conversation today. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.